Hey everybody, Damien here.
Matt here.
We are starting our premiere episode of our podcast, which is for now called the
D&M.
Damien and Matt podcast,
Damien Matt.
the D&M.
The D&M.
By episode 2, we'll totally have some really creative
Something
name
awesome.
decided that embodies everything that we would possibly want to talk about for both of us. So you might not know my good friend Matt. Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, my name is Matt. I currently live in Atlanta with my beautiful wife and two tiny twin little boys. I grew up in Southern California, just north of the Orange Curtain, where things are right insane. I am currently a customs broker by trade. By night, I translate Japanese tabletop role-playing games into English.
Wow.
Let's see, I play lots of board games, not quite as many video games as I used to, and I do lots of other nerdy things.
And tell us some weird, wacky fact about yourself that nobody would know looking at you walking down the street.
Oh man, I'm positive that nobody looking at me walking down the street would know that my stand is called Dark Entries unless they themselves were a stand user.
Oh, stand. Now that's
Yes.
a reference to JoJo's Adventure.
Yes,
the
yes,
manga,
JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Bizarre Adventure, that's right.
Yes,
Manga
and
and anime.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
for those who are watching the video feed, you can see my little G&T
Oh,
Tumblr here is a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure thing.
it's pretty posh. Also, really geeky.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm all about.
All right. So for those of
How about you?
For those of you who've been following me on YouTube, my name's Damien, and I host educational YouTube videos, among other kind of wacky lifestyle type things. I teach the mythical language of Valyrian, spoken on Game of Thrones. And this stems from my background, having studied linguistics in college. I've studied a number of languages, actually.
Yeah, that's how you and I met in Japanese class.
Japanese 101, actually, as a matter of fact.
Very long time ago.
It was a while back, but still good, still good. I grew up on the East Coast and then moved over to the West Coast. Lived in Oregon for a little while, in California for a while as well. But I've kind of spent time in just about every state in the Union. Even did a stint in Texas for a little while, working for NASA. That could be my fun fact, but yeah, I'll talk about that towards the end of my introduction.
So,
yeah.
let me ask you, how many languages do you speak, or how many have you studied?
Oh man. Well, speak is relative. I mean, I feel like I know Spanish and Japanese to a pretty awesome level. I could actually get by talking a little bit about politics or religion. Whereas if I just wanted to go visit a country, I could probably do well finding my way and buying stuff with Swedish, German, Gaelic, Italian, Farsi, Russian, Mandarin. I think that's I like to say that I have studied and forgotten more languages than most people have attempted to learn.
Wow.
Which is to say, that's not really a great feat when you lose a language, because sometimes it's just hard to find someone to speak with to keep up that fluency.
Yeah.
So that's my lesson. Keep someone around to practice with, or you'll lose it.
Yeah, even if you have to marry them.
There you go. Like this gentleman who married a fluent speaker of Japanese and amazing Mandarin speaker. Absolutely amazing.
Trilingual household.
That's fantastic. So yeah, I actually worked as a test subject for NASA for a stint. And it was absolutely fascinating. Got to live real close to the Johnson Space Center under the supervision of scientists and astronauts and all that sort of thing. It was fantastic.
Wow.
That did entail helping them understand the physiological effects of what it means to be in space for prolonged periods of time.
So you were like floating around or something?
If only they had the kind of budget to let me do that. It meant that I actually lay in a bed that had a bit of a tilt to it. So my head was slightly lower than everything else, which makes all of your blood pool in weird areas of the body.
So like
And
for like 6 hours at a time, so you can go to the bathroom, or
24 hours a day for about half a year.
oh man,
Yes,
oh
there is
man.
some rigorous testing
Should,
to get into that one, and then
ooh,
that in itself was a rigorous test to do.
wow. Should I ask about bathroom
Nope, you
breaks?
should not.
No.
That's something
Okay.
no test subject who went through what I did likes to talk about. Needless to say, we were treated really well. All right, so I'd like to ask you a little bit about peripherals
Sure.
in as far as advancing the industry of computing in weird and interesting ways beyond what we're used to using and what we're even thinking about technology
Hmm.
as far as what it can do for us or what we can do, what we can use that to accomplish.
Hmm.
So as you know, Oculus Rift has really taken off by storm. A lot of people
Hmm.
are using it to develop some amazing immersive experiences
Hmm.
in this sort of realm of virtual reality, which was kind of this orphaned child from the 90s that got a lot of people spending a lot of money to foray into the subject and then just kind of tanked as people were like, I don't really want to do that with my computing.
Yeah.
But now there's all these other companies that are like, hey, I want to take part in this. It looks like Oculus is really becoming a thing.
Hmm.
So like Morpheus is now part of the game, and Google is paying what like 500 million to invest into Magic Leap right now too, which are all kind
Hmm.
of going to compete for the same technological space as far as like how to use
So
tech.
are they all like headset things? Is that what each
As
of
I
these things
understand it,
are?
yeah, they're all going to be that sort of put this on your head
Okay.
and transport yourself into something, where you look around and you're really part of the experience of some 3D world or some game or training simulation or that sort of thing.
Hmm.
So here's a question:
Okay.
what makes a new gadget like, especially thinking in terms of like Google Glass, which has not been really widely accepted yet. It's pretty
Yeah.
expensive for one thing.
Yeah.
Google Glass or the upcoming Apple Watch that's coming out this next year. What makes it go from a gadget to like a sensation? This Oculus
Um.
Rift right now is definitely a sensation.
Yeah, but I kind of feel like, I mean, I haven't heard much about Oculus Rift since since it was bought out or whatever. Um,
That's true. Facebook bought it, and all of a sudden everybody was really upset about that.
yeah. I think that it needs to be, or it needs to at least have the appearance of being um, obtainable by everybody.
Hmm.
Like iPods when they first came out. They were the next big thing, but it was because anybody could buy one. They were they almost immediately became ubiquitous. You can just you not only did they fill a niche. You can put all of your CDs into one place. You didn't have to bring your big folder of 30 CDs everywhere, but it was also cheap enough you know to really be within the grasp of anybody who really wants it. I think that still Oculus Rift and these other um, products are still just a little bit out of the reach of the average gamer.
You make a good
Um,
point too. I think as far as why Google Glass hasn't really taken off is because of that same fact. It's a price
yes,
point.
yeah, exactly.
It's something
Yeah.
that it has so many amazing features. It does so many things that maybe we can't even think about how we could incorporate that into our life.
Mm,
But the question of are we willing to try really comes down to
mm,
can I save up for this? And maybe I can't really afford to budget that into my life as maybe like
mm,
I could the Apple Watch coming up. So that's going to be
yeah.
a lot
Well,
cheaper.
but I think that the difference between Google Glass and Apple Watch is that the Apple Watch is a very non-intrusive object, and it's probably going to do just about everything that we are used to.
Mhm.
Nowadays, it's pretty much just going to be an iPhone that's small enough to fit on your wrist. But the Google Glass, as it looks pretty awesome, but at the same time, people think that everywhere that you're going, that you're recording them, or at least possibly recording them, or at least that's still kind of the image. There's that story. I think it was like some French guy who had a similar device, like that was like you know like I don't know, implanted into his head or something, and he has a recording of these people like beating him up and ripping it out of his
Oh man,
skull.
because they were afraid
Um,
that he's probably using their
right,
information, like gathering them as data in real
right,
life.
without their
So
permission. Yeah,
maybe jumps in tech in order to be sensational have to be kind of small. Like maybe we need to capture them in bits and pieces as opposed to making
yeah,
big leaps
yeah,
about data.
yeah.
So
Absolutely, I
in
think
that
so.
regard, I mean, what do you think about like the new iPhones and newest Android phones all having this sort of lockout that the consumer can put in with a four-digit PIN, and
Mhm.
suddenly corporate company, the companies that generate Android, Samsung and Apple with their iPhones, they can't actually get into their devices. And that's true even
Mhm.
if the government demands them to with court order and
Mhm.
says, if you don't get in here, you're going to break the law. And the companies are saying, we absolutely just, we've made a device that can't be broken into by the corporate structure.
Mhm. Yeah, or at least that's they can use it as an excuse, to bypass, or to ignore whatever requests. But that's not to say that there isn't some way to hack them that we don't know of as consumers.
I mean, that's possible, and there certainly is the case that if you were trying to get data off of a criminal's phone, you could say, like,
Yeah, yeah. The circumstances required it or
yeah,
something.
you could
Yeah.
have like somebody follow the guy until he puts in his PIN and gets into his just to check
Hmm.
his text messages or something. That hold it right there. Do not lock your phone, sir. We're gonna, whatever. He
Yeah,
locks his
yeah.
phone and
Yeah,
runs, and then I don't know, who knows. So
yeah. I don't know. It kind of feels like whatever the NSA wants to do, the NSA is gonna find a way to do
that's
it.
true. Yeah, I don't
So
know. I mean, I guess would you feel safer if law enforcement could just access criminals' technology? Because that also means that they can access anyone's technology.
I don't know. I think that I don't know. I mean, whatever whatever information is going into one of those devices is coming from somewhere else anyway. So I would assume that the NSA has some way to intercept information before it goes into the whatever device it's going
Hmm.
into. So if whatever information is being stored on there is being like mouth to mouth sort of communication, maybe they'll have a bug somewhere if they really need it, or maybe through emails that they can track. I don't know. I think that really the NSA is gonna find what they want
I
somehow or another.
suppose, but I mean,
So
that also raises the question like, the more access anybody has to our data is, I think it just generates more opportunity for leaks. I mean, have you heard about the
oh
whole,
yeah, absolutely,
like
it's a
the
liability.
Snapchat leak that just happened?
Hmm.
Uh, it's
Yeah.
questionable, was this done by an anonymous hacker group? Was it done by somebody who's a bad egg in
Hmm.
the government? How do these things kind of.
From what I from what I understand, the Snapchat leak was from people that used some third party app that was saving them so that they can so that they can have those pictures later, or for well, basically from what I understand, it
Okay.
was idiots
So people were
that did it to
deliberately
themselves.
bypassing the one thing that Snapchat does. For those of you who don't know, Snapchat will actually remove the ability to look at a video or a picture that you send to somebody after you view it once. So that's the gimmick. Look at this once and then it's done. So
Hmm.
people are bypassing that, and the apps that they use to bypass that, that's also sending that picture off somewhere to somebody's creepy database, and then you get some sort of debacle like this. That's pretty crazy. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
that makes me nervous to put anything up online myself.
yeah. You just have to be careful but you always had to have been careful. It just takes common sense and yeah, and just continuously changing your password every
Common
three
sense being
days.
that one thing that is hard to find on the internet. So, Matt, let's
Yes.
talk about
Let's
Halloween.
talk about Halloween.
It's October. It's one of my favorite holidays.
This is definitely my favorite holiday of the year. Absolutely.
That's fantastic. I actually did not know this about you prior to bringing this up, so this makes me very excited. I gotta know because I'm like a kid in the candy shop when it comes to like decorations and costumes and candy and just about every single aspect of this particular season.
Yes,
If
absolutely.
you had like a, a bottomless pocket, a wallet of rupees of unendingness, not that that ever happens to Link and Zelda, but if you just had completely unlimited funds, how would you
So,
celebrate the H to the Ween? The
so
Queen.
are we talking about like enough money to where I would be able to upset the global economy and completely destroy the world's financial system,
let's let's put it in terms like this.
or or,
Say
or mm,
say you just had like a printer,
mhm.
and this printer could just spit out valid copies of like Halloween store and Halloween club gift
Oh, okay,
certificates. So
because that's a
there's only one place in the world you could spend all your funds, and it had to be in Halloween
okay.
decor and costuming
Because
and all
that's a
of that.
totally different question. Because, for example, if I had carte blanche to do anything I wanted,
Hmm.
I would forcibly kidnap all of my friends and either move all of us into a humongous drafty castle
Oh God.
in Transylvania or whatever, and then fill it with haunts and robots and all kinds of crazy stuff, or buy all of the houses around me, demolish them, and then raise up my own castle. Um, so I think what you're asking is a totally different question.
That's pretty fantastic in and of itself.
Um,
Wow.
so if I had to spend if I had to spend my unlimited funds at a Halloween store, I would probably just turn my entire house into a Halloween funhouse thing every day of the year.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So you're definitely more of the sort that would want to do the hosting aspect of everything.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You want to be the one who scares, the one who creates the memories for everybody else,
Sure.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
setting to
Yeah.
that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I mean, because I want to be here every single day. It's fun to visit them every once a year, but that's only once a year. I want to be in that zone every day.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's fantastic. I gotta admit the castle thing is definitely right up my alley. Um, I think I would probably do something maybe more myself, like having that eccentric, crazy, never-endingly built mansion. Like I like a
Mm.
good castle. It has that sort of Dracula, like old brick and mortar sort of feel to it. But there's something just so visceral about having that like Victorian, like the wallpaper that's drooping off the sides and like,
Ah,
but but the kind of place that was built by somebody who is just absolutely insane. So staircases
like
that lead up
like the
into
Winchester Mansion.
exactly like the Winchester
Nice.
Mansion. Or if you're from the East Coast, which I know you're not, there's a fantastic museum, the Mercer Museum. It's
Oh.
completely set in cast concrete, and the gentleman was a tile tycoon, so he also put tile up all over the place. And
That is creepy as
just like
hell.
the Winchester mansion,
Wow.
he continued to build in just the most cockamamie, weird ways,
Wow.
winding, narrow corridors and stairs that led to places he didn't
Wow.
finish. And yeah,
Wow.
both of them, they should
So
have gotten together, really. The Winchesters and the Mercers just like had like a big family get together and have a nice Halloween dinner and just say let's talk about meeting somewhere in the middle like Colorado and building like the
wow.
biggest Victorian castle mansion, concrete and wood
The Merchester Mansion.
Merchester.
So here in Georgia, here in Atlanta, we have not one but two like great, like huge haunted mansion, haunted house
Mhm.
things. I went through one last year, or not last year, well last year, but also last week,
Oh wow.
um, and it was Netherworld, and there's two humongous haunted mansion things that you go through, and it is scary as hell. It's awesome. There's another one real close to my house, south of Atlanta. That's it has like 6 different haunted things for you to go through.
That sounds terrific.
And I have heard of one just south of you in San Diego, where apparently it's open most of the year, and you have to apply to get into it, and they only take like 4 people per day.
Whoa.
But when you go through it, you have to sign a waiver, and it takes between 4 and 17 hours to go through it. Because they have told, once you sign the waiver, they're able to touch you and tie you up and force feed you things. And
wait, force
and just
feed?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
If you look at the pictures on the internet, like, oh man, it looks insane. And it's free too. Apparently the waiting list is like thousands of people.
I can only imagine if it's free.
Man.
Wow. How do they even select their candidates? Wow.
I don't know. I don't know how, but
man,
I mean, I love haunted houses, but this, I mean, if you look at the pictures, it looks intense.
That sounds like it would be a great premise for a movie, having people like line up for this horror experience, and then they think it's going to be like the best horror, the best haunted house sort of thing for Halloween that they could possibly imagine, and then it turns out it's real.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess if I was a vampire, you know, that would be my angle, you know. Come in and get bit by the wacky vampire.
Have a great time tonight. Nothing will really happen, but sign this waiver.
So, Damien.
Yeah.
I know that you like Halloween about as much as I do. Have you ever done the October Halloween movie challenge?
No, what is that?
It consists of watching 31 horror movies throughout the month of October, 1 per day.
Oh, I'm so hard at keeping a schedule on things.
Oh man, yeah, it's tough. I tried it this year. I did really well for the first week and a half or so. I'm already way behind, and there's no hope of me catching up. But I gave it a good shot. I think I've watched about 10 movies so far.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good marathon there, even if it is broken up into the course of days.
Yeah.
So, what kind of movies are we talking about here? We're talking about like old classics, freakies, like mind,
horror,
like
slasher,
psychological.
horror. Yeah, absolutely.
The blood porn type stuff with like puppets and
Puppet Master.
weird
yeah,
80s
absolutely.
animatronic little monsters with teeth. Some of that stuff I almost don't even really see as horror necessarily. I mean, you coat something with a lot of fake blood and you put some robotics underneath the fake flesh and you take lots of video of that thing chasing actors who aren't very good at being scared, and you call it horror, and I think that's not really horrific. It's just
it's still
a testament
in
to
the I think it's still in the
the genre.
Yeah, well, it's God, it's Halloweeny.
I mean, I guess I can see it definitely has a Halloween aspect to it. It's creepy. It gives some people chills to see that kind of thing, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, like Nightmare Before Christmas was not particularly scary,
sure,
but it's still very much a Halloween movie.
And a terrific Christmas film.
Absolutely, it's like the entire fourth quarter of the year. You can watch that movie at any time, and it would not be as strange.
Tim Burton, you marketing genius.
Some of the movies I watched so far range pretty widely. Like I watched this movie called Hell. It was a pretty cool post-apocalyptic. It was like a Mad Max sort of setting.
Okay.
But it was more of like a psychological thriller than like a gory horror movie. But it was still very very suspenseful, and I certainly think that it fit. I also watched, for example, was it the Class of Nukem High or something like that? One of those really shitty trauma movies. It's a really horrible movie, but there is a monster in there. A cinematic, whatever monster that appears, and so that bumped it into the horror genre.
Okay. I mean, I
So,
do feel that there are some movies that, even despite not really being, they don't necessarily have the tropes that we associate with Halloween. It doesn't have a Dracula monster or some sort of zombie manifestation or ghosts or anything. Some can be just particularly, they're freaky enough, they're
mhm.
disturbing enough that they don't need to have that stuff to be really classified as Halloween. Did you ever
Sure,
see?
sure.
I think it was a 1992 movie called Jacob's Ladder.
Oh man,
And that
yes.
one was really about a man who comes back from Vietnam and he's having some
Hmm.
issues with PTSD and he's trying to get back in
Hmm.
touch with some other vets from his same corps that had the same issues. And he's
Yeah,
got this thing going on in the narrative that I don't want to talk about if you
yeah,
haven't seen the
yeah.
movie,
Not to
because
give
it's
it
one of those
away.
movies you almost can't know very much about in order to really
Yeah.
appreciate what goes on. But there weren't any, creatures running around and munching on people. There are little flashes of things that he was terrified of, that he thought he saw out of the corner of his eye here or there. But
Mhm.
it wasn't that same palpable. This is a creature film sort of thing. It was very much like this is a modern film where the horrors are they're about the story. They're about the movement as
Yeah, yeah.
opposed to.
That's. I mean, I would, if somebody wanted to watch that for the October Halloween movie challenge, I would absolutely say that that is applicable because it certainly addresses the horrors of modern man. You know, it's definitely horrors
Oh
of
yeah.
war, among other things that appear in that movie. It is
Yeah, the first
intense.
time I
It's a
saw
great
that, I was
movie.
like, "Did Kubrick make this? Because this just makes me feel bad about people."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a great movie. Yeah. I mean, even something like Silence of the Lambs, I think would
Oh yeah,
work.
absolutely.
Um,
And that's really
mhm,
bizarre because that's also sort of, it fits into crime drama sort of thing, but
mhm,
it fits into crime drama in this creepy sort of sadistic and gruesome way that really challenges the audience watching it, in the way that I think
mhm.
like Primal Fear challenged like the law genre. Like, did you ever see that
Mm.
one? Richard Gere and Edward Norton. It
No.
is phenomenal. Edward Norton is tiny in this movie. He's much
Hmm.
younger than I mean, not tiny. He's a young whippersnapper man, but he's a full grown man in
Mhm.
the movie. But I not really a fan of movies about lawyers and the whole process of being in a courtroom and getting a case together. But this one had that element
Mhm.
of like, wait, did the writers of Seven get involved in this? Because it just it tanks down into
Okay.
this sort of gritty, like, oh, there's
Ah,
some dark stuff going on
interesting.
behind the scenes. And it makes
Yeah.
you really appreciate a movie
Yeah.
outside of the genre. I think Silence of the Lambs was very
Huh.
much that same way. You're like, oh, it's a movie
Yeah.
about serial killers, whatever. And if you
Yeah. Yeah.
watch it with that mindset, it just blows your mind. It's so much bigger than that genre could ever hold.
Yeah. I because like monsters and vampires and all that stuff. That's it's fun and it's Halloweeny, but I think that real horror is things that you and I or the real people on the street are really think are scary. Like I heard a comedian say that, like, for example, a housewife whose husband has had a vasectomy, she's now pregnant and she has to figure out a way to tell him that their child is going to be black. That is real horror.
I mean, yeah, that's different. You want something that, I think what horror has always done, even with the ones that were kind of comedic, was sort of push the boundaries of the mindset of the people watching it, introduce something that came as kind of
Mhm.
a shock. And even if that shock made
Mm.
people laugh in some ways, like some of the Freddy and Jason sort of things, it was always trying to
Mhm.
redefine and show something new than what everybody saw.
Mm.
Sometimes somewhere in the 80s to 90s to early 2000s, a lot of that boiled down to what are the creepiest, most creative ways we could just kill somebody. But, I think as a genre,
Yeah.
there will always be room for the deficient and then the superb, and the superb ones have fantastic story and more focus on the suspense
Mm.
and really good pacing. whereas the weaker ones will always be about getting a cheap thrill out of you. So as far as
Yeah.
suspense goes, have you ever seen Let the Right One In, or the English version Let Me In?
Oh,
Okay,
I
the
saw the
Swedish
original
version.
one. It
Yeah.
was, yeah.
Now
Oh man,
that
it was
was
great.
a long, kind of sloggy feeling movie, but I think the American version pepped it up maybe a little too fast. And I actually liked how slow the Swedes went with it. I mean, movies are amazing, but there's something that I think I've always been able to sit through one and sort of keep my composure. Sometimes I get a little wigged out at the end,
Hmm.
but I've never really lost it quite the same way as when I was playing a horrific video game. There's just something about the way you experience sort of a synergy with the character. You're in control of him.
Mm.
You're moving them around. Like that's you. Even though it's up on the screen and you're using a little joystick to move them around. I mean, that's you sympathize when things happen to
Hmm.
your guy up on there on the screen.
Yeah, yeah.
What are some of the scariest games you have played?
Oh man. Um. So yeah, when it comes to playing scary video games, I am a humongous sissy. I remember like when the first Resident Evil came out. Um, the first hallway where you start walking down, the dogs jump through the window.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I threw the controller out of my hand across the room and shrieked, and yeah, and I wasn't able to play one of those games alone for a couple of years.
Wow.
Um, I remember in college when Resident Evil was remade on the GameCube, I had to have like four dorm mates in my room watching me play. Nobody else would want to control it. I had to control the game, but I had to
Of
have people
course.
there to both to watch and give me emotional support.
It's like, you can do it. Come
Yeah.
on. Face that monster.
Of course,
Walk down that corridor.
yeah. Oh man, and that the remake was so intense, because there were doors that would shake,
Oh yeah.
and that something is on the other side, um, and um, and sometimes the doors would break down, and the zombies would like literally run at you, and oh my
Hmm.
god,
Nothing scarier than a running zombie. You know, the
man,
shambling ones you can get in your mindset of, oh, I can do something about this. I can
yeah,
outlast them somehow. I think for me, the
yeah,
first real horror experience I had to have been on the GameCube, and that was Eternal Darkness.
oh yeah,
I played this with a mutual friend of ours. I don't know if I should say who.
mhm.
And we
I know who.
hung out in his like little separate add-on. It was like a pool house in the back that got turned
Oh
into a
yeah,
place
yeah,
where you could make put a couch, and he kind of lived
yeah.
back there.
I know exactly what you're talking
We had the surround sound speakers. We turned off all the lights and had this big screen TV where all these scares were happening to us. And the creepy thing about Eternal Darkness was not all the zombies and all the things that you had to fight, which, slowly ramped up into these creepy, chthonic abominations with bizarre powers and weird body structures that you couldn't imagine. It came down to the meta insanities, because you had this meter, this insanity meter, that as you went more and more insane in the game would start to mess up for you. And it affected your character in a number of ways, but then it also started to affect you in a number of ways. Your UI would change. Your character would like just start melting through the floor, or the game would pretend like it was resetting or erasing your data off of the memory card, or you'd see a fly on your TV screen. You're like, no, wait, that's in the game.
about.
Just these horrible
That's great.
things. Yeah, it was fantastic, and it really
That's
made you
awesome.
feel like you were losing it while you were playing the game.
Well, so there's a game where you will lose it. There's no, oh man, there's no mechanical effect like that.
Hmm.
Yeah, Dark Souls. Have you played
I've
that?
never played that one.
Oh man, that is an intense game. You die often, unless you are extremely careful.
Okay.
And if you are extremely careful, you will get very far. You will rack up a lot of souls, which is sort of the currency of the game. And you're going to find your way around. But one wrong move and one bad step, one careless misstep will kill you. and you are going through dark caves. You're crossing really really tiny bridges. You're coming up against enemies that will just literally jump around the corner, or as you come around the corner and ambush you. And you do not want to die, because if you die, you're not going to get any stronger. You're not going to get any further.
Mm-hmm.
But oh my god, that game is intense. That will make you lose your shit. It's awesome. That is definitely a Halloween game.
How do you feel about games that are less about frightening the player? Like Doom 3 is clearly that one was even written by a horror movie writer, as far as the scripted events that happen to you while you're playing the game. And about games that are really just sort of Halloween themed. Talking going back to your standards of your Castlevania, Slaughterhouse. These aren't games that are really meant to give you the creeps and go to bed with nightmares, but there's just something macabre and Halloween-y about them,
Well, I definitely like the theme of Castlevania and gothic horror kind of stuff. It's awesome. I just like that that motif. It's great. It's one of my favorites. But stuff like Doom 3, it can be hit and miss. Some of them are kind of hokey. You can see things coming a mile away. You might in a horror movie.
I think there's something different too about having a game where you eventually end up with things like flamethrowers and rocket launchers and you're equipped with guns and flashlights and all this kind of stuff, as opposed to just a game where you got a sword or a machete or a whip or something, and you just kind of bring it back to that medieval I'm fighting monsters and I'm gonna do it with my non-ammo, just what I got in my hand, and I'm just gonna try to beat them with it, sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it's hard to go wrong with that sort of just I'm gonna go through and just kill werewolves and stab vampires and and just be an awesome fighty dude. It can be done. You can make a bad game, but it's gonna look cool.
And there's something cathartic about it, I think, too. There's that sort of world where it's romanticized because there's all this darkness and demonic nature, and you're in that sort of creepy but romantic, Baroque. You have that the gothic music sort of playing, these weird sort of sound like minor key Beethoven pieces going on in the background, and you're mankind's only salvation. And there's just something that is just so much more I don't know, gives me more gusto about who I am and what I'm doing in the game than being a G.I. Joe, fighting to liberate some made-up country or something like that in a first-person shooter. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to a great Halloween. Maybe catch some of those movies on the list. Maybe play
absolutely.
a game here or there for nostalgia's sake.
Yeah. I have a list of movies that are on my list. I'll send that to you if you're interested in trying a maybe a half of a October movie challenge.
I'll give it a go and see what I can get myself to commit to. But I'll go ahead and put that challenge and those amazing haunted houses you've been looking up. I'll put that all in the links below on the video. If you're not seeing this on YouTube, can you put those on SoundCloud? I'll edit this part out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much for watching our... Thanks so much for watching / listening to our premiere podcast.
Hopefully it was fun. If you have any ideas, any requests, something you want us to talk about, or things you don't want us to talk about, or if you don't want to hear me so much as you want to hear Damien, or something.
Blasphemy.
It's whatever. Let us know your thoughts, and we will try to make your wishes come true.
Yeah, we'll see you in the next episode. All right, thanks so much for listening, guys. Take it it easy.